The teapot was still steaming when Jesse Lynn Bardwell vanished from the mountain town of Elkhorn, Kentucky, population 2,041. In early May 1981, the first summer rain draped a thin mist over Cedar Hollow Lake, where the rare glow of lights from wooden cabins reflected on the calm water. Jesse's neighbor, Mrs. Irene Cobb, saw the 22-year-old leave the Blue Lantern Diner earlier than usual, clutching a small purse and pulling up the collar of her gray coat. Jessie said she felt tired and wanted to rest at home, promising to make up her shift the next day. Her gray coat stood out on the dirt road leading to the lake, catching the faint glow of the diner's oil lamp. Mrs. Cobb watched until Jessie's figure disappeared into the thick fog, and what happened in the hours that followed would haunt Elkhorn for 4 decades. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. In the early summer of 1981, Elkhorn City, a small town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky, retained the quiet charm of a place sustained by long-defunct coal mines. Narrow roads wound around hillsides, wooden porches bore faded paint, and the diner and gas station were the rare bright spots still pulsing with life. Each evening, as thin mist rolled down from Pine Mountain, the golden glow from Cedar Hollow Lake reflected on its serene surface, and the town settled into a stillness so deep you could hear a truck passing at the far end of the hill. In this setting, Jesse Lynn Bardwell, a 22-year-old from Alabama who had moved here just over 6 months earlier, lived with her boyfriend Jason Lowe, a local gas station worker, in a small wooden cabin on the road to the lake. Jesse worked as a server at the Blue Lantern Diner, a spot frequented by most townsfolk. Colleagues described her as reserved, polite, and with melancholic eyes. Lately, many noticed she seemed tired, her face pale after late shifts, but when asked, Jesse only smiled and said she was fine. She rarely went out, spending most of her time working or heading straight home. Jason sometimes picked her up, but often she walked alone along the gravel path through the pine forest. On a late evening in early May, the diner still had customers, but Jesse unexpectedly asked to leave early, telling the manager she felt dizzy. No one thought much of it, assuming it was just a mild cold. Around 9 o'clock, Jesse left, wearing her light gray coat and carrying her small purse. A few regulars saw her cross the street, walking faster than usual, her figure fading into the slope toward Cedar Hollow Lake. That was the last time anyone in town saw Jesse Lynn Bardwell. The next morning, she didn't show up for work or call in. Her workstation at the diner remained tidy, her unclaimed monthly paycheck still in its envelope. The phone at her rental rang unanswered. Colleagues initially thought she was sick, but by the second day, worry set in. Jesse had never missed a shift without notice. The manager stopped by her house, but the cabin was locked. Curtains drawn, no lights on. In Mississippi, Jesse's father, Gary Bardwell, called for 2 days straight with no response. Each time he picked up the receiver, he heard only the long ring echoing through the line. By the third day, a bad feeling drove him to act. He called the Elkhorn City Police Department directly, reporting that his daughter was completely out of contact and requesting an official search. The report was logged late that afternoon in the station's ledger, marking the start of a missing persons case that no one in town could have imagined would become a mystery spanning nearly 4 decades. When the call from Mississippi ended, Police Chief Don Hales sat quietly for a moment in the station. He was used to reports of fights, lost property, or traffic violations, but rarely did anyone report a missing relative. Hales carefully noted every detail from Gary Bardwell's report, a father who spoke calmly, but with a hoarse voice, repeating that his daughter never went a day without contact. That afternoon, Hales and a young officer, Pete Millard, drove to the road leading to Cedar Hollow Lake, where Jesse rented a home with Jason Lowe. It was a sparse residential area, with only a few wooden cabins scattered along the hillside. When they arrived, the afternoon sun was fading, the front door was locked, and the curtains were drawn tight. No signs of anyone home. Hales knocked repeatedly and called Jesse's name, but there was no response. A dog, barking from the neighboring house, brought out Mrs. Irene Cobb, an elderly neighbor. She said she hadn't seen Jesse leave the house in 2 days, though she usually left early for work and returned late. She clearly remembered the previous weekend, around midnight, hearing an argument from the cabin, followed by a door slamming and a car engine starting and driving away. Since then, the house had been completely silent. Hales noted her statement, and with Millard, circled to the back. The rear door was also locked, but through a gap in the curtains, he saw the interior was tidy. With the landlord's permission, Hales used a spare key to enter. The small cabin had only 2 rooms, with simple furnishings and no signs of disturbance. On the dining table sat 2 glasses and a plate of half-eaten bread. A wall clock was stopped at 11:10. In the bedroom, the bed was made, a small suitcase was untouched, and a coat hung on a chair. No signs Jesse had packed to leave. Hales opened the closet, finding a few work uniforms and a woman's purse still neatly hung. In the kitchen, the sink was clean, with no broken items or signs of a struggle. Everything was too quiet, unbelievably so. Leaving the house, Hales told Millard, "Doesn't look like someone left for a trip unprepared." They returned to the station to complete the scene report. That evening, Hales officially opened case file, missing person. KY 80-1421, noting Jesse's description. Female, 22 years old, 5'5", brown hair, gray-blue eyes. Last seen, wearing a gray coat and blue jeans. He had missing person flyers, printed, and sent Jesse's photo to nearby police stations. He also contacted the diner to verify the last time she was seen. The diner owner confirmed Jesse left work early that May evening, looking tired, but giving no reason. She didn't show up for her shift the next morning. These sparse details shed no light, only sharpening Hales' growing unease. He knew it was time to speak directly with the last person who saw her. That morning, Chief Hales summoned Jason Lowe to the station for an official statement. Lowe arrived late that morning, lanky, with disheveled hair and a dark jacket, looking tired but eerily calm. He said he'd heard about Jesse's disappearance the day before, but thought she'd just left temporarily. Maybe to Alabama to clear her head. Hales asked for the exact last time he saw her. Jason said on Sunday morning, Jesse left the house with her purse, saying she was visiting her mother and would be back in a few days. When asked how she left, he said he wasn't sure, maybe got a ride with someone. Hales carefully noted each word, sensing Jason's story was disjointed and inconsistent. He pressed, "Do you know who drove her?" Jason shook his head, saying he didn't. "Did anyone see her leave with you?" "No. I stayed behind. Just heard her close the door and go." When asked why he hadn't contacted Jesse, Jason said she often turned off her phone when she wanted peace. Hales found the answers unconvincing. He asked for the phone number or address of any relatives Jason might know, but he said he couldn't recall exactly. The interview ended in under an hour, leaving Hales with growing doubts. That afternoon, he ordered a check of the town's post office and bus station to see if anyone had seen Jesse or if there were any travel tickets in her name. Results showed no trips or shipments linked to Jesse Bardwell in the past 3 days. Hales contacted the Pike County Sheriff for support in checking nearby areas, expanding the search to Highway 197 leading out of town. No checkpoints reported a vehicle or person matching her description. The day's report noted, no personal items found, no signs of a struggle. Hales called Millard in to discuss remaining possibilities. If Jesse had left, she would have taken at least a few personal items, but the house check showed all her clothes, wallet, and purse were still there. He began considering that Jesse hadn't left willingly, but was taken that night. Mrs. Irene Cobb, the neighbor, confirmed hearing an argument that weekend night, but saw no one leave except for the sound of a car starting. She couldn't identify the driver, only noting the engine sounded like a sports car. The town had only a few such cars, and Jason owned the only black Pontiac Firebird, often parked right outside. Hales jotted this in his notebook. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but his instincts signaled something was off. At day's end, Hales called Gary Bardwell to update him. He told the father there were no signs yet that Jesse had left Elkhorn City. The man on the other end paused, then said, "If she said she was coming home, she'd have called. She never left without telling me." Hales hung up, feeling the weight of a case that was no longer just a routine missing person report. The next morning, he ordered a compilation of all gathered information from Jason's statement, the neighbor's account, to traffic checks. The report showed no evidence Jesse left town voluntarily. No signs of a struggle at the house. No conflicting statements ruling out her sudden disappearance that night. Hales reviewed each line, then wrote a final note in the conclusion. Suspicious disappearance requires expanded investigation and consideration of criminal involvement. That afternoon, case file KY-80-1421 was updated to a new status. Suspicious disappearance. The morning after, the rain had stopped, but the air still carried the dampness of early summer storms. Police Chief Don Hales left the station early, holding a topographic map of the Cedar Hollow Lake area, marked up from the 1960s when it was still a mining site. He pointed to the map, designating the first search radius, a 3-mile area around Jesse Bardwell's house, extending southwest to the lake's edge. 7 officers and over 20 local volunteers, mostly retired miners, firefighters, and a few acquaintances of the victim's family, were mobilized. They gathered in the lot in front of the town church that morning, assigned to groups, each equipped with radios, flashlights, ropes, and maps. The sky was overcast, the dim light casting a gray haze over the distant pine forest. As the group moved toward the lake, the soft, muddy dirt roads made travel difficult. Hales split the team in two. One group followed the east shore of the lake along the main road, while the other headed west into the dense, less-traveled forest connected to an old mining road leading out of town. Hales and Officer Millard joined the western group. They moved slowly, checking tire tracks and scanning bushes and low grass. Every few meters, Hales marked their path with wooden stakes to avoid getting lost in the woods. By midday, the sky cleared slightly, and the fog began to lift. A volunteer shouted when they spotted something in a damp patch near the forest's edge, about 100 meters from the main road. It was a woman's shoe, beige, with mud-caked laces, lying tilted under a small pine tree. Hales approached quickly, signaling no one to touch it. He knelt to inspect. The heel was crushed, the fabric coated in wet dirt, but otherwise intact, as if recently dropped. A few steps away, shoe prints blended with tire marks, the tracks slightly skidded and deeply pressed into the wet ground. He instructed Millard to photograph the scene and record the coordinates. The shoe was sealed in an evidence bag and sent to the station for later verification. The search party stood silently around, everyone aware this could be the first trace of Jesse since the night she vanished. Hales scanned the area, noting the direction of the tire tracks, and led the group along that path for about half a mile. The road was steep and winding, covered in roots and loose rocks. In a low dip, the tire tracks appeared to skid and stop. The mud was churned up, but no other signs were found except some old bottle shards. He marked the area as a point of interest and directed the other groups to expand their search around it. All afternoon, the team scoured the lake's perimeter, checking every section of the shore. Some volunteers rowed small boats to the lake's center, probing with poles, but the murky, deep water made visibility nearly impossible. As dusk fell, the search paused. Hales noted in his preliminary report, one piece of evidence found, beige women's shoe, not yet confirmed as victims. No signs of attack or body in surrounding area. Night fell quickly, thick fog rolling back in. Hales returned to the station, exhausted but unable to leave his desk. He opened a photo of Jesse, placing it beside the recovered shoe. The color, size, and style matched the shoes she often wore to the diner, according to the owner. He added to the case file, likely belongs to victim. The next morning, the search resumed, expanding to the lake's southern side. Teams combed the forest, and abandoned mining road. Under the damp ground, they found multiple overlapping tire tracks, most too old to pinpoint timing. Some used sticks to probe dense grass, while others checked drainage ditches leading to the lake. Scattered rain interrupted the work. Hales walked along the shoreline, boots caked in mud. His mind fixed on one question: where did Jesse go after leaving the diner, and why did no one see her leave town? By day's end, as light faded, the search halted. No further traces were found beyond the shoe from the previous day. The summary report noted that the lake area was thoroughly searched, but yielded no body or additional personal items. Hales ordered a pause in the search to await further analysis of the scene and witness statements. In his notebook, he wrote the day's final line: "The shoe may be the first key, or just a coincidence. Evidence must be verified before proceeding." 3 days after the Cedar Hollow Lake search paused without results, Chief Hales shifted the investigation's focus. He decided to return to the starting point: the house where Jesse and Jason lived. The prior visit was only a preliminary check, with no official warrant to collect evidence. That morning, Hales filed for a search warrant with the Pike County Court, citing suspicious factors: the victim's traceless disappearance, the boyfriend's inconsistent statements, and the discovery of an item possibly belonging to her near the lake. By afternoon, the judge approved the request, allowing a full search of the house and surrounding property within 48 hours. When Hales and 2 officers arrived, the house was still locked, with no one present. Jason Lowe was summoned to witness the entry. He appeared reluctant, visibly annoyed at the sight of the warrant, but did not object. The house stood isolated, less than half a mile from the lake. Its wooden walls bore faded paint, the front porch was tin-roofed, and the surrounding grass grew knee-high. Inside, the air was musty and stifling. The living room was unnervingly tidy, the sofa draped with a neatly folded blanket, the coffee table spotless, free of dust. Hales noted the floor seemed recently cleaned, with a faint smell of cleaning solution. On a wooden shelf by the window, the only photo was of Jesse at the diner, its glass slightly fogged, with less dust than the rest of the room. In the kitchen, Hales noticed an oddity: everything was neatly arranged, but the trash can was empty, with no bags inside, unusual for an occupied home. Jason explained curtly that he cleaned up a few days ago. Hales said nothing, only noting it. In the bedroom, he found only one pillow on the bed, the mattress neatly made, the blanket folded squarely. In the closet, Jesse's clothes hung untouched, none missing. A small suitcase, mentioned by Mrs. Cobb, sat undisturbed in the corner, but the bathroom caught Hales's attention most. A fluorescent light illuminated white-tiled walls, where a faint brown stain, almost scrubbed away, lingered near the sink's edge. Hales knelt, lightly dabbed it with a tissue, and shone a flashlight closer. The stain was dark, trailing along the waterline, as if a liquid had pooled there and been hastily wiped. He signaled the forensic technician to collect a sample immediately. While the technician worked, Hales checked the laundry room down the hall. Inside, an old washing machine was still damp, containing a rolled-up red blanket. When pulled out, it carried a mix of detergent and a sharp, unpleasant odor. Jason said Jesse washed it just before leaving. Hales lifted a corner, noticing long hairs caught in the fabric. The blanket was sealed and sent to the station with other evidence. Back in the bedroom, Millard found a small card on the dresser, a Mother's Day card with white daisies on the cover, containing a few incomplete lines in blue ink. "I miss you more than you know." The writing stopped mid-sentence, unsigned. Hales carefully bagged the card, noting possibly written just before disappearance. The search lasted over 3 hours. When the forensic team finished collecting samples, Hales ordered the house sealed to prevent further interference. He called Jason to the porch, revisiting details of his prior statement. Jason stuck to his story. Jesse left Sunday morning for Alabama, taking little with her. When Hales asked why the bed was made, and the blanket washed that day, he shrugged, saying, "I cleaned to keep the house tidy." Hales observed his face, noting his eyes avoided Jesse's name. He didn't press further, but a hypothesis formed. Something happened in this house before Jesse vanished. That evening at the station, the stain sample was sent to the state lab for analysis. A week later, results confirmed human blood, type O, unidentifiable due to lack of DNA comparison. The report noted the blood was diluted by cleaning solution. Hales read the results, set the paper down, and sat in thought. All he had were disjointed pieces, a faint blood stain, a damp red blanket, an unfinished card, and a boyfriend's unchanging story. None were strong enough to turn a missing person case into a criminal one. Hales wrote in the report, "Insufficient grounds for charges. Continue monitoring related individual." He ordered discreet surveillance on Jason, noting that any unusual actions, leaving town, selling assets, or moving, must be reported immediately. As Hales left the office that night, rain fell again. He stood under the porch, watching faint lights reflect on the wet road. One thought lingered: this house is too clean, unnaturally so. In the days that followed, Chief Hales spent most of his time reviewing Jason Lowe's statements, cross-referencing them with witness accounts and scene evidence. The forensic report on the bloodstain confirmed type O, a common blood type, unusable as definitive evidence, but it didn't ease Hales' suspicions. He reopened the initial interview record. Jason claimed Jesse left Sunday morning for Alabama with her purse, promising to return in a few days. But the neighbor's account of an argument and a car leaving at midnight the previous night contradicted his timeline. Hales began tracing every detail. He had the diner's work schedule checked, confirming Jesse ended her shift around 8:30 p.m. Saturday, just hours before the neighbor heard the argument. This made an incident that night highly likely. Hales revisited Mrs. Irene Cobb, asking about the sound she heard. She spoke clearly. "I'm sure it was Jason's voice. Loud, drawn out. Then something fell, and it went quiet." She also confirmed hearing a car leave, sounding like his Firebird's engine. Hales noted this, adding to the file with a red underline. Conflict occurred at night, not the next morning. That afternoon, Hales visited the gas station where Jason worked. The manager confirmed Jason was at his Sunday morning shift, but arrived nearly 2 hours late, citing personal matters. A coworker recalled seeing him wash his black Pontiac Firebird soon after arriving. Around 6 a.m., the coworker said, "I teased him about washing so early in the foggy weather." Hales asked if they noticed mud or anything unusual. The coworker said the car was very dirty, like it had driven through wet dirt roads. This caught Hales' attention, as the Cedar Hollow Lake area and Old Mining Road were muddy, especially after the rain 2 days earlier. Hales had Millard check the Firebird, but when they visited the house, Jason claimed he sold it to a friend in Lexington and couldn't recall the buyer's name. When asked for a bill of sale or transfer papers, he said it was just a verbal deal. No evidence or witnesses confirmed the sale. This deepened the case's murkiness. Hales requested a statewide vehicle registration check, but records showed only Jason Lowe's name, with no transfer documented. In an internal report he noted, "Vehicle location unconfirmed, likely still in Jason's possession." In another effort, Hales had officers canvass local auto shops and car washes, seeking anyone who recalled a black Firebird being cleaned or repaired around that time. An employee at a car wash 15 miles from town confirmed seeing a young man, resembling Jason, washing a car Sunday noon. He described it, mud caked all over, especially the rear undercarriage. Hales sent Millard to take a statement, record the scene, and confirm the date and time. The details matched, just 1 day after Jesse's disappearance. In a second summons, Jason stuck to his original story. He insisted he sold the car, couldn't recall to whom, and had nothing to do with Jesse's disappearance. When Hales asked why the neighbor heard an argument that night, he said, "We had a small disagreement, nothing serious." Asked why he washed the car the next morning, he replied, "Wanted to clean it." The rain made it dirty. Hales didn't argue, only noted it, but he saw Jason's answers growing vaguer, like a rehearsed script. Internally, officers discussed seeking a detention order for further questioning, but the county prosecutor declined. The reason: no body, no direct evidence of a crime. The bloodstain couldn't be identified, the car wasn't found, and all statements remained within the realm of possible. Hales understood the rules, but Jason's silence grated on him. A few days later, Jason stopped coming to the police station, saying over the phone that he wanted no more disturbances. Hales couldn't force his cooperation without an official order. He turned to other sources: Jesse's friends, co-workers, diner staff, and locals in the area. Everyone said they never heard Jesse mention wanting to leave or return to Alabama. On the contrary, she had told a close friend she planned to stay, save money, and buy her own car. These details further undermined the theory of her voluntary departure. That evening, in the quiet office, Hales sat before a map spread across his desk. The marked points: Jesse's house, Cedar Hollow Lake, the mining road, the gas station, formed a closed loop within a 10-mile radius. All were within Jason's daily range of activity. He stared at the map, then jotted a brief note in his log. All roads lead back to him, but he knew intuition and a few suspicions weren't enough to move forward. The law required concrete evidence. On the last day of the week, Hales compiled all collected data: inconsistencies in Jason's statements, a witness seeing him wash his car, the unlocated Firebird, and the inconclusive forensic report. Everything was filed into a thick dossier, stamped investigation, open status. As he signed it, Hales felt frustration, not because his suspicions might be wrong, but because the case was stalling at a legal threshold it couldn't cross. In the report's brief conclusion, he wrote, "Insufficient direct evidence. Case remains in open investigation status, pending new findings." After the investigation paused in open status, Chief Hales remained uneasy. Though official funding for the search had run out, he persuaded a small group of volunteers to continue combing the Cedar Hollow Lake area later that month. The weather had warmed, and the lake's water level dropped slightly, exposing muddy patches and grassy bogs previously hidden by rain. Hales believed if anything had been missed in prior searches, now was the best time to find it. He, Officer Millard, a rescue worker, and a local resident set out early one morning, splitting up to cover two dirt paths leading to the lake's edge. In the dense western forest, about half a mile from where the shoe was found, Millard spotted something glinting in the low grass. It was a silver bracelet, tarnished by mud and moisture, with JLB engraved inside. Hales carefully picked it up with a tissue, examined it, and sealed it in an evidence bag. Though not yet confirmed, he was almost certain it belonged to Jesse Lynn Bardwell. He marked the location on the map and ordered the group to expand the search within a 100-meter radius. Over an hour later, in a low-lying area near the water's edge, a volunteer found a mud-caked red fabric scrap caught in tree roots. The piece, about 20 centimeters long, was still soft, indicating it hadn't fully decomposed. Hales immediately documented the scene, had it photographed, and placed the fabric in a separate bag. He noted its red color matched the blanket found in Jason's washing machine. A gut feeling made him pause silently before saying to Millard, "We may have touched the missing piece." Continuing to search the area, they found faint tire tracks extending from the old mining road to the lake's edge. Some were deeply pressed into the wet ground, with clear tread patterns. A technician cast a plaster mold of one track for later comparison. Preliminary analysis showed it matched the tire type used on a Pontiac Firebird, the same model Jason owned. Hales had the distance measured from where the tracks stopped to the water's edge, less than 15 meters. The muddy ground gave way to slick pebbles, which could cause a vehicle to skid if it got too close. This suggested a vehicle may have come very near the lake the night Jesse vanished. That afternoon, back at the station, Hales filed a detailed report. He requested the lab analyze the red fabric for fiber type and sent the silver bracelet for engraving comparison with Jesse's belongings. 2 days later, preliminary results confirmed the fabric was cotton polyester blend, matching the blanket from Jason's house. The engraving lab concluded the JLB matched the handcrafted style common at Elkhorn Jewelry, where Jesse had bought a similar bracelet the previous year. Verified by a stored receipt. Both pieces of evidence directly linked to the victim, found in the lake area. Still, the critical piece was missing, a body or clear proof of a crime. When Hales submitted the report to the county prosecutor's office, the response was unchanged. Insufficient grounds for prosecution, the prosecutor stressed that, while the evidence tied to Jesse, it didn't prove Jason's criminal act. There were no witnesses to the event, no blood, no vehicle present. Hales understood the legal limits, but he felt he was holding a chain leading toward an end, with the final link still buried in the mud. Undeterred, he had the lake area map re-examined. Cedar Hollow had 3 main roads: the Western Mining Road, a pine forest trail, and a dirt road to the highway. All converged at the southern shore, where the tire tracks were found. Hales theorized a vehicle came here at night, stopped close to the water, and either left or got stuck. However, rising water levels after rains made deeper lake searches impossible. Hiring specialized diving equipment exceeded the department's budget, so he paused, waiting for a better opportunity. The second search's final report noted 2 confirmed items linked to victim Jesse Lynn Bardwell: silver bracelet engraved JLB, and red fabric scrap. Tire cast matches Pontiac Firebird type. No body or crime signs found. Recommend storing evidence and awaiting further testing. The file was sent to the Kentucky State Bureau of Investigation for storage under missing person, evidence collected. That evening, Hales sat alone in his office, reviewing photos of the new evidence. The desk lamp glinted off the tarnished bracelet, its JLB, faint but readable. Next to it was the red fabric, mud-stained like dried blood. He knew these small items meant little legally, but to an investigator, they carried weight. In his work log, he wrote the day's final note: if the truth lies around the lake, these items are starting to speak. His work log, he wrote the day's final note: if the truth lies around the lake, these items are starting to speak. Despite the new hope from the Cedar Hollow evidence, Chief Hales' investigation stalled in the following weeks. State lab results confirmed the bracelet and fabric belonged to Jesse, but couldn't pinpoint when or how they were left behind. No body, no blood samples, no clear signs of a struggle. All Hales had were faint fragments of an incomplete story. He requested state assistance to scan the lake with sonar for metal objects, but it was denied due to budget constraints. The Pike County Prosecutor's Office also refused new search or arrest warrants without solid physical evidence. Though unspoken, Hales sensed the case was nearing a dead end. By late fall 1981, the search team officially disbanded. Volunteers returned to their routines, and Cedar Hollow Lake resumed its usual calm. In the small Elkhorn police station, photos and evidence were neatly filed into a thick dossier, its paper cover curling from humidity. Hales occasionally drove by the old mining road, gazing at the gray water, convinced something was still hidden, but powerless to act. No budget, no warrant, and crucially, no evidence strong enough to sway a court or prosecutor. In early 1982, Jason Lowe left Elkhorn City. He told the gas station he was moving to Tennessee for a new job. A local informed Hales that the house he and Jesse shared had been returned to the landlord, most belongings removed. When Hales made a final check, the house was empty, with only damp wall marks where photos once hung. He stood in the living room, feeling a cold emptiness. Every trace of the 2 who lived here was now just memory. He took a few photos, sealed the door, and returned the keys to the landlord. The Elkhorn Police's final record stated, "Related individual left locality. No clear evidence of crime. Case remains open, pending new information." But new information never came. Over 6 months, Hales' calls and letters to state agencies received the same reply. No new data or witnesses found. Each lab report he opened echoed the same conclusion. Source unidentified. Internally, Jesse's case was relegated to the pile of unsolvable missing person files. Hales resisted, trying to keep it active, hoping for a break, but by mid-1982, Pike County cut the investigation's budget. The search officially ended, and the department was ordered to transfer all evidence and documents to the state archive. On the handover day, Hales personally checked each sealed bag, the silver bracelet, red fabric, Mother's Day card, tire track photos, and blood analysis report. Everything was neatly packed in a steel box labeled Case KY-80-1421. Signing the transfer form, he paused, then added a small note. No body, no evidence, no conclusion. That became the case's final official statement. After that, Elkhorn City slowly moved on. Locals stopped discussing the missing girl. Mrs. Irene Cobb occasionally mentioned it to acquaintances, but eventually shook her head. Maybe she really did leave. Only Hales carried an unresolved burden. On late shifts, he'd reopen the file, reread notes, and study old photos, feeling the weight. In a small town like Elkhorn, such cases weren't allowed to linger. People needed to focus on practical matters, taxes, security, patrols. By late 1982, Jesse Lynn Bardwell's case was officially marked unsolved. Inactive, meaning unresolved, but no longer actively investigated. Hales didn't object further. He only requested to keep a copy of the house search report and scene photos in his personal files. It was his only way to remind himself that a girl from Alabama had vanished without a trace in Kentucky, and that truth sometimes wasn't buried by time, but by the silence of those involved. In his work log's final page for the year, he wrote a brief summary. Case paused. No body, no evidence, no conclusion. But the story isn't over. In early 1983, after Jesse Lynn Bardwell's case was marked unsolved, inactive, all evidence was transferred to Kentucky's state archive per protocol for inactive cases. Chief Hales personally inspected each sealed bag before transport. The steel box labeled Case KY-80-1421 contained 5 items. The JLB engraved silver bracelet, red fabric scrap, Mother's Day card, tire track photos, and the unidentifiable Type O blood report. Each was numbered, sealed in moisture-proof plastic, and placed in the storage box, secured with red paper tape bearing Hales' signature. A state vehicle collected it on a cold February morning. As the box was closed, Hales stood silently, knowing he might never open it again. Months later, a case file copy was sent to Jesse's family in Mississippi at their request. Gary Bardwell read and reread the report, hardly believing it could end so easily. He wrote to Hales, asking if the police could continue searching. Hales replied sincerely, but briefly. No funding, no new evidence. In the years that followed, the family regularly contacted the Pike County office, sending letters, calling, or visiting when passing through Kentucky. Each time, they got the same answer: the case was paused, with no new updates. Time passed, and Elkhorn City gradually forgot the disappearance. New residents barely knew a young woman had vanished by Cedar Hollow Lake. The wooden house where Jesse lived was rented out multiple times, then fell into disrepair, and by the late 1990s was demolished, leaving only an old concrete foundation amid weeds. Hales retired in 1989, keeping a copy of Jesse's case file in his personal drawer, occasionally revisiting it as an unclosed memory. He knew without a body or new evidence, the case would forever be labeled unsolved. In Mississippi, Gary Bardwell kept writing to Kentucky police annually, as a way to insist he hadn't given up. His letters grew shorter, eventually just one line. I'm still waiting for my daughter to be found, but after decades, no responses came beyond administrative notices. By the early 21st century, as DNA technology began aiding criminal investigations, Kentucky launched a program to digitize old case files. Families of victims were encouraged to submit relatives' DNA to the National NamUs database for future matches. Gary Bardwell learned of this through a TV program in 2016. He contacted the state's forensic office and voluntarily submitted his blood sample for storage. It brought no immediate results, but he believed even a slim chance could unlock the truth. At that time, case file KY-80-1421 lay untouched in a storage facility in Frankfort, a gray concrete building with hundreds of stacked metal drawers, holding thousands of unresolved cases spanning decades. On the file's cover, the faded words "missing person, 1981" were barely legible. The red sealing tape now a dull brick color. No one opened it, no one mentioned it, and no one knew it still held fragile evidence of a young woman who vanished that summer. 40 years after Jesse Lynn Bardwell's disappearance was classified as a cold case, the summer of 2020 brought an unexpected turn. In July, eastern Kentucky faced its worst drought in decades. Cedar Hollow Lake, typically full year-round, dropped nearly 2 meters, exposing thick mud and dried tree roots at the lakebed. Locals began scouring the shoreline, clearing debris and retrieving long-buried items. One morning mid-month, Ray Henson, a resident near the lake, walked the water's edge collecting glass bottles and scrap metal. At the southern shore, where the old mining road once led to the water, he spotted a mud and moss-covered round metal object protruding just a hand's width from the ground. Initially thinking it was a rusted barrel, he scraped away mud and recognized the curved, glossy outline of a car's hood. Realizing it might be a submerged vehicle, he immediately reported it to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. That afternoon, a county rescue team and 2 technicians from the Elkhorn City Police Department arrived. The area was cordoned off, with a 30-meter radius secured around the object. After hours of pumping water and suctioning mud, the vehicle's body emerged, a black-painted, long-bodied, classic-style car. A rescue worker knelt, wiped mud from the rear, and read the embossed word Pontiac. The faded license plate bore the number K80-1214, matching the Firebird registered to Jason Lowe in the 1981 missing person case. The discovery was quickly relayed to state police, and Don Hales, now retired, was contacted to confirm details. The recovery operation spanned 2 days. On the first, the rescue team used heavy cables and a mobile crane to hoist the vehicle from the lakebed. It was caked in mud, paint peeling, the undercarriage corroded. Once on shore, technicians photographed it, measured the chassis number, and opened the doors for inspection. The leather seats were rotted, but the frame was identifiable. The driver's compartment was empty, no body present, only scattered items, a broken mirror shard, a rusted metal lighter, and a snapped plastic comb. When they opened the trunk, a pungent mix of mud and decaying organic matter hit them. In the dim light, a bundle wrapped in red fabric lay tilted to the left. The team paused, donning gloves and masks. The lead rescuer gently cleared mud from the surface, revealing frayed, rotted fabric edges. As the cloth was partially opened, off-white bones mixed with mud emerged, ribs, an arm bone, and a small skull fragment. Dark brown hair strands clung to the blanket's edge. A silver ring, faintly engraved with JLB, lay nearby. The scene was immediately resecured, and state forensic experts were summoned. They documented the evidence, photographed it, and collected soil, water, and bone samples. The discovery silenced onlookers for the rest of the afternoon. All items, red blanket, silver ring, hair, and remains, were sealed on site. The vehicle was wrapped in plastic netting and loaded onto a specialized tow truck for transport to the State Forensic Center in Frankfort. Before leaving, Hales, invited as an honorary observer, stood quietly by the lake's edge. He watched the car, submerged in mud for 40 years, being pulled up, a silent witness to time. In his old notebook, he wrote a simple line, "Pontiac Firebird. Cedar Hollow, recovered July 17, 2020. Red stain on fabric still visible." The next morning, at the Forensic Center, technicians began cleaning the vehicle with specialized solutions. The chassis number confirmed it matched Jason Lowe's 1980 registration. All doubts about the car's origin vanished. The preliminary report noted, vehicle submerged over 30 years, likely since 1981. Contains human remains, likely female. Official results required DNA and bone isotope analysis, but initial signs marked this as the biggest breakthrough since Jesse's disappearance was recorded. That afternoon, all evidence, blanket, hair, ring, and remains, was sealed in separate sample bags in stainless steel containers, accompanied by a signed receipt from the Kentucky State Coroner's Office. A copy of the 1981 case file was retrieved from Frankfurt's archive for cross-referencing. Everything was transported to the Kentucky State Forensic Science Center in Lexington under secure conditions for weeks of forensic analysis. As the evidence truck left Cedar Hollow, a crowd of locals lingered by the lake, watching. None had imagined a story lay buried in that mud. Hales sat in his car, glancing at the rearview mirror, where the lake shimmered in the late-day sun. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, Cedar Hollow's silence was broken. At the Kentucky State Forensic Science Center in Lexington, analysis of the vehicle and evidence began after transfer protocols were completed. The lab, overseen by Dr. Lane Porter, a forensic expert with over 20 years handling cold cases, started by separating items, remains, hair, red blanket, silver ring, mud samples, and vehicle materials. Each was coded, photographed, logged, and sent to specialized units. Dr. Porter ordered DNA testing to identify the deceased, alongside analysis of other items for additional biological traces. DNA extraction from the bones occurred in a positive pressure room to prevent contamination. A femur and skull fragment were selected, their surfaces ground to access inner tissue. After hours of chemical processing and centrifugation, technicians obtained enough DNA for STR sequencing, a method to identify individuals through genetic comparison. The reference sample came from the NAMIUS database, where Gary Bardwell had submitted his DNA in 2016. After 3 days of processing, the results showed 15 of 15 genetic markers matched perfectly. The error rate was less than 1 in a billion. The report stated in bold, genetic match confirmed, sample ID #KY801421, corresponds to Jesse Lynn Bardwell. The victim missing for nearly 40 years was officially identified. Concurrently, the bone pathology team assessed the cause of death. The skull was cleaned, dried, and examined under microscopes and CT scans. A nearly 8-centimeter fracture ran along the right temporal region, with sharp, unrounded edges, indicative of trauma while alive. The depth and direction suggested a strong blow from a blunt, flat-surfaced object. No fractures in arm or leg bones indicated no car accident or fall. The report concluded, cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Meanwhile, the forensic biology team processed the red blanket. Technicians found both female and male DNA traces on the fabric. The female DNA matched the remains, confirming it was Jesse's blood or fluid. The male DNA was isolated, amplified, and compared to the state's criminal database. Within hours, CODIS returned a perfect match to Jason Lowe, whose DNA was collected in the late 1990s for an assault case in Tennessee. The separate pieces, victim identity, trauma evidence, and male DNA on the blanket, formed a logical chain pointing one way. Dr. Porter ordered additional isotopic spectrometry to estimate the time of death. Results showed the bones were submerged for decades, with mineral ratios matching Cedar Hollow's sediment. The estimated death occurred between spring and early summer 1981, aligning perfectly with Jesse's disappearance. The silver ring was cleaned, its JLB engraving clear under light. Mud around it contained red fibers, confirmed as matching the blanket's material. The lab's final report concluded: 1. Victim identity, Jesse Lynn Bardwell. 2. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. 3. Additional DNA, male DNA on blanket matches Jason Lowe. 4. Estimated time of death, approximately May 1981, 2 months. The data was printed in 3 copies, stamped by the Kentucky State Forensic Center. 1 stayed at the lab, 1 went to the Pike County Sheriff's Office, and the third was sent to the Kentucky Justice Department. Attached was a note from Dr. Porter. DNA and physical evidence confirmed the 1981 case victim as Jesse Lynn Bardwell. Biological evidence directly links to Jason Lowe. Recommend reopening investigation. As the file was sent, technicians cleared the lab, storing remaining bones in preservation boxes. A somber mood hung over the room. The findings after 40 years not only confirmed a forgotten woman's identity, but reopened a case thought permanently closed. In her internal log, Dr. Porter wrote, "Cedar Hollow victim. Identification complete. Requires further criminal investigation." On September 12, 2020, the Kentucky Justice Department received the forensic report. The file's cover, stamped in bold, read Case KY 80-1421. Forensic results received. After nearly 40 years in storage, Jesse Lynn Bardwell's case had scientific evidence strong enough to bring it back into the light. On September 14, 2020, 2 days after the Kentucky State Forensic Center sent its report, Case KY 80-1421 was officially marked with a red stamp. Reactivation authorized. Cold Case Division. The decision came from the director of the State Criminal Investigation Bureau, based on Dr. Lane Porter's recommendation that the new evidence warranted reopening. After nearly 4 decades in storage, Jesse's case returned to active investigation for the first time since 1982. The Justice Department assigned the case to the state's Cold Case Unit, which handles unresolved past cases in collaboration with Pike County Police and the State Prosecutor's Office. Lieutenant Lauren Hines, a veteran investigator experienced in solving cold cases with DNA, was put in charge. She received the file on the morning of September 16 during a brief meeting in Frankfort. Opening the old storage box, she saw familiar relics, a black and white photo of Jesse in her diner uniform, a copy of Chief Hale's reports, and the faded cover note, "No body, no evidence, no conclusion." Now that was replaced by clear forensic data, matching DNA, confirmed cause of death, and male DNA linked to the former suspect. Hines began by reconstructing the 1981 investigation. She reviewed every report, cross-referencing dates and times, noting unresolved details. Key points stood out: the disappearance timeline, Jason Lowe's inconsistent statements, the missing Pontiac Firebird, and evidence around Cedar Hollow. She focused on Hale's notes about the typo bloodstain in the bathroom and partially washed red blanket. With new forensic results, the pieces formed a cohesive chain. The next morning, at the Forensic Center, technicians began cleaning the vehicle with specialized solutions. The chassis number confirmed it matched Jason Lowe's 1980 registration. All doubts about the car's origin vanished. The preliminary report noted, "Vehicle submerged over 30 years, likely since 1981. Contains human remains, likely female." Official results required DNA and bone isotope analysis, but initial signs marked this as the biggest breakthrough since Jesse's disappearance was recorded. That afternoon, all evidence, blanket, hair, ring, and remains, was sealed in separate sample bags in stainless steel containers, accompanied by a signed receipt from the Kentucky State Coroner's Office. A copy of the 1981 case file was retrieved from Frankfort's archive for cross-referencing. Everything was transported to the Kentucky State Forensic Science Center in Lexington under secure conditions for weeks of forensic analysis. As the evidence truck left Cedar Hollow, a crowd of locals lingered by the lake, watching. None had imagined a story lay buried in that mud. Hales sat in his car, glancing at the rearview mirror, where the lake shimmered in the late-day sun. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, Cedar Hollow's silence was broken. At the Kentucky State Forensic Science Center in Lexington, analysis of the vehicle and evidence began after transfer protocols were completed. The lab, overseen by Dr. Lane Porter, a forensic expert with over 20 years handling cold cases, started by separating items, remains, hair, red blanket, silver ring, mud samples, and vehicle materials. Each was coded, photographed, logged, and sent to specialized units. Dr. Porter ordered DNA testing to identify the deceased, alongside analysis of other items for additional biological traces. DNA extraction from the bones occurred in a positive pressure room to prevent contamination. A femur and skull fragment were selected, their surfaces ground to access inner tissue. After hours of chemical processing and centrifugation, technicians obtained enough DNA for STR sequencing, a method to identify individuals through genetic comparison. The reference sample came from the NAMIUS database, where Gary Bardwell had submitted his DNA in 2016. After 3 days of processing, the results showed 15 of 15 genetic markers matched perfectly. The error rate was less than 1 in a billion. The report stated in bold, "Genetic match confirmed. Sample ID #KY801421 corresponds to Jesse Lynn Bardwell." The victim, missing for nearly 40 years, was officially identified. Concurrently, the bone pathology team assessed the cause of death. The skull was cleaned, dried, and examined under microscopes and CT scans. A nearly 8-centimeter fracture ran along the right temporal region, with sharp, unrounded edges, indicative of trauma while alive. The depth and direction suggested a strong blow from a blunt, flat-surfaced object. No fractures in arm or leg bones indicated no car accident or fall. The report concluded, cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Meanwhile, the forensic biology team processed the red blanket. Technicians found both female and male DNA traces on the fabric. The female DNA matched the remains, confirming it was Jesse's blood or fluid. The male DNA was isolated, amplified, and compared to the state's criminal database. Within hours, CODIS returned a perfect match to Jason Lowe, whose DNA was collected in the late 1990s for an assault case in Tennessee. From 1983 to 1988, he worked as a freelance mechanic, living off used car sales. In 1989, he registered at a mobile home park on the outskirts, then vanished from residency records for nearly a decade. In 1998, Tennessee criminal records noted a James Alton Lowe, arrested for assault in a Memphis bar, sentenced to 8 months probation and required to provide DNA. The sample, that 22 years later, matched the male DNA on the red blanket. The FBI confirmed through old photos and biometric data, James Alton Lowe and Jason Lowe were the same person. Their report to Hines concluded, subject has maintained low visibility under altered identity since early 1980s. Possible involvement in violent incidents, unprosecuted. With FBI support, Hines expanded the identity trace. Bank records showed he opened accounts under different names in Knoxville, withdrawing funds regularly until 2019. His last known address was a small house on Magnolia Avenue. Neighbors described him as private, rarely spoke, but occasionally had loud arguments with a young woman who stayed with him. This caught Hines's attention. She tasked the witness team with in-depth interviews of those who interacted with him. Rachel Moore, a former co-worker at a mechanic shop, said he was hot-tempered, controlling, didn't let anyone touch his things. A former landlord noted he changed his room's locks every few months and once saw him burning papers at night. Hines compared these accounts to the 1980s records and found striking similarities. Old reports noted friends saying Jason was possessive, quick to anger, and often scared Jesse. The behavioral pattern remained nearly identical after 4 decades. Isolating loved ones, controlling routines, hiding documents. Those habits don't just appear, Hines said, in a meeting with the FBI's criminal psychology team. They're the mark of someone who believes they can hide every mistake with silence. Meanwhile, the Kentucky witness team made progress. They found 2 former co-workers from Jason's old gas station in Elkhorn City. One recalled the morning after Jesse's disappearance, when Jason arrived late, clothes muddy, and washed his car at the station. "I'd never seen his car that dirty," he said. He claimed he'd driven the mining road, but it hadn't rained that day. This statement, noted in Hale's old report but unverified at the time, was now reaffirmed. Hines had examiners compare the Pontiac Firebird's tire cast to 1981 scene photos, Results showed the mud tracks matched the Trans Am model Jason owned. Hines compiled the evidence. A witness seeing him wash the car, matching tire tracks, DNA on the blanket, and a consistent pattern of controlling behavior. The chain was strong enough for a comprehensive picture. She organized an interagency meeting with the Cold Case Unit, FBI, and state prosecutors in early November 2020, lasting 4 hours. On screen, Hines presented a timeline: 1981. Jesse Bardwell disappears in Elkhorn City. 1983, 1988. Jason Lowe changes names, moves to Tennessee. 1998. Arrested for assault, provides DNA sample. 1998. Asian's evidence. Each point was backed by documents or records. When she displayed the JLBD bracelet photo and forensic results, no one doubted this was an unresolved criminal case. The deputy state prosecutor concluded, "We have a body, DNA, a suspect, and a behavioral pattern. That's sufficient legal grounds." To ensure procedural rigor, Hines sought direct statements from those who knew Jason in Tennessee. Over 3 days, she and 2 FBI agents visited Knoxville, discreetly gathering information around his neighborhood. A local store owner recognized his photo instantly. "He still buys Camel cigarettes here every morning." A neighbor noted he drove an old Tennessee plated pickup and usually kept to himself. The more Hines learned, the more she believed he hadn't changed. Just lived in the shadow of another identity. Back in Frankfort, Hines finalized a 60-page supplemental report, including FBI verifications, witness statements, and behavioral comparisons. The conclusion stated, "Biological data, physical evidence, and witness behavior confirm Jason Allen Lowe's direct involvement in Jesse Lynn Bardwell's 1981 death. Recommend arrest warrant and state-level prosecution." On November 9, 2020, the file was submitted to the Kentucky Justice Department. In the recommendation, Hines signed under the bolded text, "Probable cause established. Warrant recommended." After 40 years, the fragmented investigation closed with clear grounds for an arrest warrant against the man once deemed merely a person of interest. On October 21, 2020, after the arrest warrant was approved by the Kentucky State Court, Lieutenant Lauren Hines and the Cold Case Unit, with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and FBI Knoxville, executed a covert operation to apprehend Jason Allen Lowe, who had evaded Kentucky for nearly 4 decades. Codenamed Operation Hollow, it was conducted in secrecy to prevent the suspect from fleeing. FBI surveillance confirmed Lowe lived in a modest single-story house on Knoxville's outskirts, registered as James Alton Lowe, a 62-year-old single mechanic. At 5 a.m. on October 23, a 7-member task force approached. Dawn was dim, fog blanketing the road. With Lowe's pickup parked in the yard, the team surrounded the wooden house. Hines read the warrant at the door. After a brief silence, the door opened. Jason appeared in a gray t-shirt, eyes dazed but unsurprised. "What's this about?" he asked, voice hoarse. Hines replied curtly, "Arrest warrant for the 1981 Jesse Lynn Bardwell disappearance, Kentucky." Without resistance, he raised his hands as cuffs clicked on. In the police car's headlights, his aged face held the same cold demeanor noted in old records. The house was searched immediately under a concurrent warrant. Hines led the forensic team into the living room, where items were eerily tidy, reminiscent of the 1981 Elkhorn house. On a dusty bookshelf, they found a small locked wooden box. Inside were old items, a pocket watch, lighter, black and white photos, and a folded card with yellowed edges. Hines, gloved, opened it. A Mother's Day card, identical to the incomplete one found in his 1981 home. The blue ink, now blurred, read, "I miss you more than you know. I promise I'll call soon." The text stopped, unsigned, asked about the card. Jason lowered his head, muttering, "I kept it because she forgot it." His voice was low, tired, as if resigned to the past catching up. Police sealed the box's contents and seized a computer, phone, and personal documents. Hines noticed a notepad on his desk with fragmented entries. Didn't mean it, just an accident. No one would believe. These were photocopied and added to the file. After the search, Lowe was taken to Knoxville's police station for questioning. The 3-hour interrogation, witnessed by a Kentucky prosecutor, began with Hines confirming his identity and timeline. Jason admitted living with Jesse in Elkhorn City in 1981, and arguing the night before she disappeared, but insisted, "I didn't kill anyone." Asked why his Pontiac Firebird was found at the lake's bottom, he paused, then said, "I drove near the lake. The tires slipped, I panicked, then I left." Hines showed crime scene photos, the rusted car, the red blanket, and remains in the trunk. Jason glanced, paled, but maintained evenly. "I didn't know she was there. I don't know who did that." When Hines presented the DNA report, the room's mood shifted. She spoke deliberately. "We found your DNA on the red blanket, matching your 1998 Tennessee sample. The blanket also had Jesse Bardwell's blood and hair, cause of death, severe head trauma." Jason gripped his hands tightly, silent. After a moment he whispered, "It was an accident. She fell, hit her head on the cabinet. I panicked when she stopped breathing." Hines stared. "A fall cracked her skull completely? And you hid her body in the trunk and pushed the car into the lake? That's an accident?" He avoided her gaze, sighing. "I was scared. I didn't know what to do." Hines didn't argue, placing another photo on the table, the JLB silver bracelet. "Recognize this?" Jason closed his eyes, silent. After a pause he said, "She liked wearing it. I didn't think they'd find it." She noted, "Suspect shows awareness of evidence." The interrogation ended without a formal confession, but Hines had enough to strengthen the case. In the recording, Jason's accident claim contradicted the forensics. An 8-centimeter skull fracture from a blunt object didn't align with a typical fall. No evidence suggested anyone else was present that night. Technicians later analyzed his notepad handwriting, confirming it matched the Mother's Day card. The report noted, "Retention and rewriting of victim's message indicate guilt-related fixation." As Lowe was escorted to Knox County's detention center, he said to Hines, "I always knew this day would come." She didn't respond, closing her file. In the car, early morning light filtered through the iron-grated window, illuminating the wrinkled face of the man who haunted Elkhorn for 40 years. That afternoon, Hines sent a summary report to the Kentucky Justice Department, writing, "Suspect Jason Allen Lowe, alias James Olton Lowe, arrested in Knoxville, Tennessee, October 23, 2020. Evidence linking directly to victim recovered at residence. Suspect denies murder, claims accident, but statements contradict forensic findings." The file was stamped, "Suspect in custody." After 4 decades, the man who vanished with Cedar Hollow's secrets was brought back to justice. In the first days at Knox County Detention, Jason Lowe remained silent, refusing to cooperate. Only at the third interrogation on October 29, 2020, with a public defender present, did he elaborate on the night Jesse died. Conducted by Hines with a state prosecutor, he spoke haltingly. "We argued. She threw a glass at the wall. I grabbed her arm. She fell, hit her head on the cabinet. I panicked. When she stopped breathing, I was afraid they'd think I killed her." Asked what he did next, he admitted, "I wrapped her in a blanket, put her in the trunk. I planned to bury her, but it was dark, the road muddy. I slid into the lake. The car got stuck. I left." Hines asked, "Why not call the police?" He lowered his head, "Because I knew I'd be arrested. I wanted to forget it all." His admission of hiding the body, though claiming an accidental death, was deemed incomplete, as he maintained it was not murder. To verify, Kentucky's forensic team reconstructed the scene using his description. Technicians built a 3D model of Jesse's 1981 house, mapping the cabinet's position and fall direction. Simulating the fall showed only minor forehead impact, incapable of causing an 8-centimeter skull fracture. Analysts concluded the injury required a direct blow from a blunt object, like a wooden club or table edge. The report to the prosecutors stated, Injury inconsistent with suspect's accident claim, consistent with intentional assault. Concurrently, the automotive forensics team completed the Pontiac Firebird's physical analysis. In the trunk, they found dried mud layers over peeled paint. Spectrometry confirmed the paint matched the lacquered wood in Jason and Jesse's old bathroom, where the 1981 bloodstain was found. Mud samples from the trunk matched Cedar Hollow's sediment, confirming the car's location. Crucially, faint dried blood traces were found on the trunk's inner rim. Under fluorescent light, they glowed clearly. DNA testing confirmed it was Jesse Bardwell's. This evidence further unraveled Jason's story. If accidental wrapping the body, placing it in the trunk, driving to the lake, and sinking the car were deliberate acts of concealment. Hines' report noted, suspect had time to process aftermath, showing calculated intent to destroy evidence. The cleaned bathroom, washed blanket, and wiped floors post-incident further proved efforts to erase traces, ruling out unconscious panic. During the final confrontation with Jason, Hines presented the forensic results. He no longer reacted strongly. Sitting in the interrogation room, hands cuffed, he asked, "You think I meant to do it?" Hines replied, "I don't think the evidence says so." After a pause, he nodded slowly, voice hoarse. "I didn't want to. I lost control. Just a moment." He avoided accident, saying mistake. The session was recorded, noting, suspect admits to assault, causing death, and hiding the body. The final forensic report solidified the conclusion. Experts analyzed paint, mud, fabric, and DNA, creating a detailed comparison chart. Every data point matched 1981 sealed evidence. The conclusion listed: 1. Trunk paint, sourced from victim's house. 2. Trunk blood matches Jesse Bardwell's DNA. 3. Trunk mud and organic material match Cedar Hollow sediment. 4. Skull fracture structure indicates active strike, not a fall. 5. Death timing and preservation align with immediate disposal. All findings were submitted to the Kentucky Justice Department in early November 2020. Hines and the state prosecutor co-signed the prosecution recommendation, stating, based on forensic evidence, cross-referenced statements, and post-event behavior, Jason Allen Lowe intentionally caused Jesse Lynn Bardwell's death and concealed her body by placing it in a vehicle and sinking it in Cedar Hollow Lake. On November 10, 2020, the formal indictment was announced. Jason Lowe was charged with manslaughter, intentional killing, and tampering with evidence, destroying and concealing evidence. Hines was present as the prosecutor read the charges at the detention center. Jason didn't object, only stared at the floor, silent. As she left the room, Hines paused at the door, looking at the man who had carried that secret for 40 years. In her internal report that evening, she wrote a brief line: "His confession doesn't free him, but it aligns with the truth the evidence speaks." The trial of Jason Allen Lowe began on the morning of December 7, 2020, at the Federal Supreme Court in Lexington, Kentucky. The courtroom was packed. Media, local reporters, law students, and residents who followed the 1981 disappearance were all present. The prosecution was led by Deputy State Prosecutor Wesley Grant, while the defense was represented by appointed attorney Andrew Farkas, experienced in complex criminal cases but rarely faced with one spanning 40 years. The trial was presided over by Judge Caroline Mercer. Among the audience, Lieutenant Lauren Hines sat with her cold case unit colleagues, the team that brought the case back from the archives into the light. As Jason was led in, the room fell silent. Dressed in an orange prison jumpsuit, hands cuffed, his face gaunt and hair white, he bore no resemblance to the young man in 1981 photos. Only the quiet demeanor of someone who knew the road ahead was closed. He didn't look around, only lowered his head when asked to confirm his identity. The judge read the charges. Defendant Jason Allen Lowe, charged with 2 counts manslaughter with intent and tampering with evidence related to the death of citizen Jesse Lynn Bardwell, occurring in Elkhorn City, Kentucky, May 1981. Prosecutor Grant opened with a concise but forceful statement. He emphasized that this was not just a murder case, but a reminder that justice's responsibility never fades. Grant presented the evidence chain, starting with the Pontiac Firebird's recovery from Cedar Hollow Lake. In that car, we found a woman's remains, with DNA matching Gary Bardwell, the victim's father. On the red blanket wrapping the body, we found the defendant's DNA. Paint, mud, and blood in the trunk all tell the same story, that she was killed in the home they shared, then taken away in that car. On the courtroom screen, crime scene photos were displayed: Cedar Hollow Lake with receded water, the rusted black car, the JLB silver ring, and the rotted red fabric. The room was silent. When the victim's skull image appeared, Grant paused, then read from Dr. Elaine Porter's report. The skull injury resulted from a forceful blunt object. It could not have been a fall or accident. He then played Jason's recorded statement. I wrapped her in a blanket, put her in the trunk, and pushed the car into the lake. His hoarse voice echoed in the cold courtroom, sending a chill through the audience. Defense attorney Farkas didn't dispute the evidence, but asked the court to consider time and remorse. This man, he said, has lived over half his life in torment. He didn't intend to kill. It was a spontaneous, uncontrolled act. Farkas stressed Jason's cooperation, which helped locate the body and end the family's wait. He proposed a plea deal for a lenient sentence. Judge Mercer asked Jason if he agreed with the deal. He stood, voice low. I accept responsibility. I did wrong. I can't change it now. His words were brief, not deeply remorseful, but no longer denying. Hines, seated below, looked at him not with hatred, but with quiet sadness. The case was solved, but no one could call it a victory. The trial continued over 2 days. Witnesses included forensic experts, DNA analysts, former Chief Don Hales, and Dr. Porter. Hales, with white hair and a raspy voice, recounted the early days of 1981, when he received the missing person report. He scanned the courtroom, then said slowly, "We searched for months. I thought we'd never know what happened. Now we do. Late, but justice came." His words moved many. On the third day, Jesse's family spoke. Gary Bardwell, now over 80, leaned on his cane at the podium, holding an old photo of his daughter at 22. His voice trembled. I just want to thank those who didn't give up. For 40 years, I prayed daily for the truth. Today, I heard it. I forgive, but I don't forget. The room stood, clapping in silence. That afternoon, December 10th, the court delivered its verdict. Before ruling, Judge Mercer said, "The court acknowledges the defendant's admission, cooperation, and plea agreement. However, the consequences are irreversible. A life was taken, a family suffered for 40 years. Justice is late, but it is justice." She sentenced, defendant Jason Allen Lowe is sentenced to 30 years for manslaughter, with intent, and 10 years for tampering with evidence, totaling 40 years imprisonment. In that moment, Jason slightly bowed his head, showing no emotion. Farkas placed a hand on his shoulder, then stepped away. Hines looked at Gary Bardwell, seeing him nod faintly, tears rolling down his aged face. She understood that for him, the sentence wasn't revenge, but confirmation. That his daughter was named in the legal record, no longer an unidentified missing person. After the trial, the Kentucky Justice Department held a brief press conference in the courthouse hallway. Prosecutor Grant announced, "The Jesse Lynn Bardwell case is officially designated solved cold case, 2020. It's a testament to relentless investigative efforts and DNA technology, delivering justice, though 40 years late." This statement was later printed on the report's cover. As Jason Lowe was led away, the faint clink of handcuffs echoed in the long hallway. Late-day light streamed through the courthouse windows, illuminating the old stone wall. Hines watched, not for triumph, but for the closure of a story so many carried lifelong. In her internal memo that evening, she wrote, "Case KY 81-421 concluded. Truth established, victim named." After 40 years, silence finally speaks. Following the sentencing, Lieutenant Lauren Hines and the cold case unit began the final phase, closing case KY 81-421. In the weeks after the trial, all data from 2 years of reinvestigation was reviewed, categorized, and compiled into a complete file for transfer to Kentucky's state archives. Every piece of evidence, test sample, and recorded statement was recoded under the Justice Department's new system. The final file's cover boldly stated, "Case solved by DNA correlation, September 2020. Beside it, Hines signed as final investigator, marking the official end of a case spanning 4 decades. On December 22, a closing meeting was held in a small room at the Cold Case Unit's Frankfort headquarters. Attendees included Hines, her team, a state prosecutor's representative, the Criminal Investigation Bureau, and Dr. Elaine Porter from the Forensic Center. The nearly 600-page file sat on the table. Hines summarized, from the 1981 missing person report, failed searches and case closure, to the 2020 Pontiac Firebird discovery and DNA results. Every phase formed a cohesive chain. She said, "What's most memorable isn't just identifying the perpetrator, but proving a case thought dormant can be revived if preserved properly." During the discussion, Dr. Porter proposed standardized guidelines for long-term evidence preservation. Pointing to a photo of the old evidence box, she said, "If the bracelet and fabric weren't sealed in moisture-proof bags in 1983, the DNA might have been destroyed, and we'd have no results today." The Criminal Investigation Bureau noted the suggestion and decided to draft new statewide protocols for unidentified missing person cases. The Justice Department's final report was completed by month's end. Its performance evaluation stated, 1. DNA technology and biological sample storage were pivotal in resolving cold cases. 2. Federal collaboration between the Cold Case Unit and FBI yielded exceptional results, especially in tracing a suspect's identity after decades. 3. Continued investment in digitizing files and expanding NAMU's family sample programs is needed. These lines closed the procedural aspect, but for Hines, the Jesse Bardwell case was about persistence. In her internal report, she wrote, 40 years ago, Chief Don Hales refused to let this disappearance be forgotten. He recorded every detail, preserved every item, despite their seeming worthlessness. That diligence gave us today's chance." Sending a final copy to Hales, now in his 70s. Hines included a note, "Your case has its ending." He replied with a brief handwritten card, "I know, and I'm at peace." In early January 2021, the case evidence was transferred to Kentucky's Central State Archives. Technicians resealed the old metal box, adding a new label, "Solved Cold Case. Jesse Lynn Bardwell." It was placed on shelf 17, row 3, beside other cases solved by DNA. As the archivist logged the transfer, Hines stood quietly, nodding slightly. Her nearly 2-year investigation and a family's 40-year wait had reached its end. At a brief project closing press conference, the Justice Department spokesperson declared, "The Jesse Lynn Bardwell case proves that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, can reopen justice's door if carefully preserved. No case is too old for answers." This was quoted on Kentucky Public Radio's evening broadcast. Returning to her office, Hines closed the worn leather-bound original file. On her desk, the report's "Case solved by DNA correlation, September 2020." Text still smelled of fresh ink. She placed it in a drawer, locked it, and in her final work log entry for the year, wrote, "Every cold case is an unkept promise. Today, we kept one." News of the Jesse Lynn Bardwell case's resolution spread across Kentucky days after the Justice Department's official report. On December 28, 2020, major state newspapers ran near-identical headlines. "Cold case from 1981 solved after 39 years. Arrest shocks Pike County." Articles opened with the Pontiac Firebird's recovery from Cedar Hollow Lake, captioned, "Justice never misses, only arrives late." Within hours, local news and TV channels recounted the long-forgotten story. Elkhorn City, the quiet Appalachian town, became a media focus. Locals, many from the 1980s, shared memories of the disappearance, the smiling young woman at the Blue Lantern Diner, and the stormy night when someone heard a car leave the house near the lake. In the week after sentencing, Elkhorn City's mayor's office received dozens of calls and letters from the press. Local TV produced special reports, interviewing those from the 1981 search. Pete Millard, then a young officer, now retired, said on air, "When we found that shoe in the woods, I didn't know it would take half a lifetime to understand its meaning." Mrs. Irene Cobb, Jesse's neighbor, nearing 90, was filmed by her nursing home window, saying softly, "I knew that engine sound. I knew something was wrong that night. Now she can rest." The event rekindled memories in Elkhorn and spread statewide. Kentucky's law and criminology schools used the case in year-end lectures, stressing evidence preservation and DNA databases. Lexington TV aired a special, "The Girl in the Lake," the case that returned from silence, retracing the journey from 1981 to 2020. Lieutenant Hines appeared briefly, saying, "We don't recover the past to punish, but to restore truth." In early January 2021, Jesse's family held a small memorial by Cedar Hollow Lake. The day was cold, the water calm, reflecting faint afternoon light. Gary Bardwell, who waited nearly half a century, sat on a wooden chair by the shore, holding his daughter's photo. Beside him were his wife, grandchildren, and Jesse's old friends. They brought white daisies, floating them on the water where the Pontiac had rested for decades. Gary said softly, "The lake held the secret too long, but it finally gave my daughter back." No one spoke further. Only the wind through the pines and gentle waves lapping the shore sounded. Post-memorial, Kentucky announced the Legacy Review Program, reviewing unsolved missing person cases from 1970 to 2000. The Justice Secretary stated, "The Jesse Bardwell case proves every preserved piece of evidence, however small, can reopen justice. No case is too old for answers." The Cold Case Unit received additional funding, expanded staff, and direct collaboration with the National DNA Database. In the next year, they listed over 200 cases for retesting, with KY 81421 as the state standard procedure model. In Elkhorn City, the town council erected a small memorial by the lake, inscribed, "In memory of Jesse Lynn Bardwell, 1959-1981. Justice found, 2020." The spring dedication ceremony included Hines, Don Hales, and 1981 search participants. The simple stone plaque faced the water, where white daisies were often left weakly. The media dubbed it, "The Case Reborn from Silence," while the Justice Department's internal records listed it as Kentucky's first DNA-solved cold case. Forensic journals published analyses emphasizing 40 years of proper evidence storage. Jesse Bardwell's name became a symbol for missing victims whose truth still awaited. For Elkhorn residents, the case's closure wasn't just justice served, but a reminder. The diner where Jesse worked had new owners, but her old photo remained on the wall, a brown-haired girl with kind eyes, smiling in soft light. Below, the owner wrote, "Found at last." As that winter passed, Cedar Hollow Lake froze thinly, reflecting moonlight. No more car lights, no secrets buried underwater. Only the quiet peace the town had lost for 40 years returned. In Kentucky's archives, beside "Case Solved, 2020, a small note was added. This case restored faith that time cannot bury truth. The story of Jesse Lynn Bardwell, missing in 1981 and found nearly 40 years later, is not just a personal tragedy, but reflects a profound value in today's American society. The power of persistence, science, and timeless justice. In a nation where technology and law align, this case shows the importance of preserving data, evidence, and faith in scientific progress. Had Chief Don Hales not diligently kept the red blanket, muddy fabric, and JLB bracelet, or had Gary Bardwell not submitted DNA to Nameus in 2016, the truth might still lie at Cedar Hollow's bottom. In modern America, where life moves fast and memories fade, this story reminds us that every trace matters if valued and preserved. For everyone, the case's lesson lies beyond investigation, in the resolve to seek answers. Jesse's family waited 40 years, their faith driving authorities forward. In a world of injustices, negative news, or personal setbacks, we must remember that justice, like truth, sometimes arrives only with patience. This story teaches that truth can be hidden but never buried forever. And every small act, from preserving evidence to submitting DNA, can unlock justice for a lifetime. Thank you for joining us on this journey to restore justice for Jesse Lynn Bardwell. Proof that truth, however long buried, will be found. Subscribe to our channel for more cold case stories solved by faith, science, and perseverance. See you in the next video.